Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we are back again with another Dragonheir video, and in this video we'll be talking about inspiration and artifacts. And when we talk about inspiration, so I want to give you a brief overview of what exactly it does, so then we'll move straight to artifacts. So inspiration in this game works very similarly to empowerment in others, like Raid Shadow Legends, and 7DS also had the alt effect, but it is quite nuanced. It is very specific to champions or champion type, and it works really in an interesting way. There are some issues with inspirations that I have, and it mostly comes down to what it happens in arena when you use empower champions. But outside of that, it's really good. It's not as broken as some people think. Some of the things are pretty broken, don't get me wrong, but not as broken as some of you would think, right? So to inspire a hero, you basically need to pull a duplicate copy of that champion, right? So I have these soul imprint coins, and for each inspiration level I need to use a duplicate of the same hero, right? So I need to pull this champions at least 6 times to get him and fully inspire him. And each level of inspiration, one thing is going to be common is these stat bonuses, and these are compounded. They are not like 8% only, so it's not like a total of 40%. It's going to be much more than that, and it's going to be applied to you to your base stats, not that the stats that you had after gear. And gear does not take the stats you gain from inspiration into consideration. Gear only scales through base stats of your champion, not the inspiration stats. And once you have, so these stats alone by themselves are pretty powerful, but you get more of it. Each inspiration level also gives you some sort of like a passive or stat bonuses. So for example, in this case, it's kind of like a passive where it heals the hero by 8% after killing an enemy, which is fine. It's not the greatest one. This one as well, like it's another passive when dealing damage to enemies. It's kind of like masteries in Raid Shadow Legends, if you're familiar with it. Or you can think of it as like a, secondary passives. So this is like a stat boost, crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, also after also on base stats, not taken into consideration on the gear. So be clear on that, like it's not going to break it as much as possible. So it's going to be 13% on his. It's still pretty powerful, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be 13% on the base stat, and the gear is not taking any of the inspiration stat boost into consideration. It's only going to work off scale of the base stats of your champion. And last but not the least, it ignores 15% of the target defense, so it's kind of like a built-in defense down in its kit. So it's pretty powerful overall. I mean, if you have Witches Remain, or I think there's the Crown of the Unclean that does defense, decrease defense effect, and it's 1 and 2, so you can further ignore the defense of the champion, of the enemy team. And most of the DPS units are going to be very similar. They're going to get crit rate, attack, this thing. Some of the champions which scale off of derivative damage do have enlightenment on skill 3. Flora, for example, is a great example. Vicania. You can only inspire legendary champions in this game, which is complete bullshit in my opinion, because there are a lot of good epics, right? And take for example Furbath, who's like a legendary in an epic skin, or Tonalalan, right? They're both amazing epics. Why would you not let us inspire him? Like, just add an inspiration. It could be like 3, okay, not give like 8%, give like 5% additional bonus, but why not? People will use him more often. A lot of whales will use him more often than any other legendary for like poison in a lot of PvE comps. Like, he heals, he attacks down, he's amazing, right? So they should allow us to do that. So you cannot inspire them, and some of the support casts will gain like extra healing. In some cases this will reduce the so it has 50% chance of dispelling a debuff, sorry, and then you get, whenever she's going to grant a buff, it's going to have a 70% chance of extending the duration. For some of the debuffers, it will have 70% chance of extending the duration of the debuffs. So it's pretty good. This is the broken part, and it only is applicable to arena. PvE competition, if anybody's doing whatever they want. I really don't care. It's mostly like PvP where skill haste is an issue, and I have a lot of units inspired to their maximum, but even I say like this is broken. Like it shouldn't be the case. It should also be a lot about gear intensive. So when you're making a comp or you're making a team composition, you really focus on, okay, I built this unit, I got the gear this season, next season somebody else is gonna get the gear to go faster. So it keeps things in balance and it doesn't destroy the meta so much just because you have 5 inspiration levels and the other person doesn't have inspiration levels. If that is not the case, it becomes very one-to-one, and I'm not even kidding about it. Like, for example, I have my mermaid fully inspired, but she's never gonna go first. It's not guaranteed unless I have good gear, because in beta she used to get skill haste, but they now removed completely. There's no skill haste in her kit entirely, and that is so good and such a welcoming thing to see. And it should be there for all the control healers, everybody. You should not be getting extra skill haste in this game from inspiration, because skill haste is really powerful in any kind of like competitive mode where you're fighting against another person, CVC or Sparkle tournament as it's called, or it's arena or tag team arena, live arena, whatever is going to happen. This should not be there in the game at all, because then it forces you to farm gear. With this, if I used to get, like, let's assume skill haste, and actually they reduced the amount of skill haste you get. You used to previously get 40 skill haste from the 3rd inspiration level. Now I think the champions only get 30. There's nobody who gets 40, but there's still a lot of champions that do get 30 extra skill haste, and on the last level they are able to reduce the initial ultimate cooldown by 5 seconds. So that's just nuts. There's no way you will be able to compete with it, no matter if you have a quad roll on your ruins for skill haste. You're not going to be able to beat it. So that's what makes the game not fun. Like, it should be like this. She's very much counterable. Like, if I play you with your LC braid, there's I'm getting extra accuracy, but if my gear sucks, if my luck on my gear sucks, you will win. Like, I'm being very honest about it. Like, I've lost fights against no inspiration LC brace, and it's fine. I'm happy to lose. It drives you to farm more gear. But yeah, that's the sad part about it. Like, and inspiration also has the ability to completely make a champion, like, it's a tier upgrade. Some champions, if they are inspired, go from A, B to straight up S, and that brings us to Charlac, right? So standalone basis, he's okay, and this is not even the stat boost that he's getting. Crit rate, crit damage is useless on him. His summons deal damage based off his attack. You can also use the arena artifact on him to do 100% chance of crit for the first 2 ultimates. But look at this thing. Increases the ultimate skill's initial energy by 5. Right? So your ultimate time is 7 seconds. There's so many units in the game whose battle skill doesn't go as fast. Like, this kind of thing should not be there in the game. I mean, I have it, I get that, like, but it shouldn't be. It makes the competition very unfair between spending levels, right? And it also, like, if you're lucky enough to get Charlac at level 5, yeah, you should use him, right? Because now he's from, like, 7-second ultimate is pretty much broken. That means that you have an extra unit on the field. So that's the inspiration. And another thing I want to point out is inspiration, you can always reset, no matter how many times you want to do it. So I can reset Charlac like 50 times. It's not going to cost me a thing, right? And what do you do if you don't inspire? You go to exchange shop and you buy artifact with your dupe champions. And for the legendary and exclusive, it's fine. You keep all your soul imprints of extra. So I have 45 extra right now. These are exclusive. You need basically 2 champions, one very specific champion duplicate, and the other could be random. And you need, for these artifacts, which go on a very specific unit. These artifacts cannot be used on anybody else, but they are game breaking. Habitas is game breaking. Floras is game breaking. Yeah, they do a ton of damage. Like, all of them are like, pretty good. Then we have these ones. So some of these ones you need very specific from a specific affinity, or you can just use a general one, right? So these two you will need fire affinity, these two ice affinity. This one is lightning. I think this one is necrosis. I may be wrong, let me know. This is necrosis, this is rally, poison, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so some of them are really good, don't get me wrong. These are like work like secondary passive, but here's the conundrum, right? Let's assume that you got a dupe, you pull the champion. Let's say it was Acilia. I'm going to be giving a lot of Acilia examples, just a disclaimer, because there are like a lot of champions in the game and I haven't memorized the skill set of all the champions. So say for example that you got a Acilia, right? You get another Acilia. Now you're thinking, okay, I can pick up a legendary artifact. So here are the questions that you really need to consider before buying an artifact. And first artifact is always going to be the Hourglass or the Witch's Remain, but that's not the problem. The first thing that you need to ask is, will I be able to level this up, right? How much use am I going to get on my champion? Will my champion be able to fully utilize it? Like, let's say you only care about PvE, you don't care about PvP, and you can somewhat let go of it. Although this is very useful in PvE as well, especially later stages of Fey Meander, all the difficult content, it is used, so just keep in mind. Say for example that you're considering buying Witch's Remain, right? You have the epic artifact. Yeah, you won't do as much damage when this is placed, but this has a higher percentage chance. It has a 15% chance advantage over the legendary one. Also, the other thing is, like, it costs 16,000 essence to upgrade one artifact to fully. Epic one you can upgrade fully to with 10,000, around 10,000. I forgot the exact number, but it's around 10,000 you can upgrade fully. The stat difference is going to be different. You're going to get, I think this one maxes out as 72 or 64 if I remember correctly, and that one accuracy you will get is 96. So there's going to be a stat difference, but you're going to maximize this, right? That is more important though. You're going to maximize the chance of inflicting it. 75%, 6,000 essence less, so that's a lot. For epics and rare, just buy anything you want. Really, you don't really need to think about it for the first few. So for example, if you're using a lightning comp and you have a Shalter in your team, this is perfect. Or if you have Ivelios in your team, this is really good. You cannot trigger critical hits, but you deal more drive damage and they benefit from it. I have no idea why they picked attack percentage here. It should have been enlightenment. Honestly, I don't really get it. What did they think while putting attack percentage? Because drive damage dealer deal more damage with more enlightenment they have. That's their primary stat. You can get the Crown of the Unclean. There are also some pretty amazing one, like this one is for a plain vanilla DPS damage dealer whose ultimate is gonna get damage bonus, right? You also have some really good healing ones, like this is amazing for somebody who does a battle skill heal, like Acilia, and you know, it has a 50% chance of granting extra heals, so pretty powerful. This one will increase healing when somebody's HP is below a certain threshold, so it's good for like a single healer, like not Acilia Ultimate. Acilia Ultimate heals increments, right? I mean, sure, her battle skill will use it, but her battle skill will benefit more from that rather than this, simply because that most of the time she's going to be using the battle skill. If you're 50%, there's a 50% chance she's going to get you crossed to that 70%, right? And it's an incremental heal, so it's going to go from like, it's 10 heals in a very short duration. So if you're at 39%, you're not going to get the full effect. So somebody like Ogok and what's her name, Jillian, there are a lot of healers in the game. You can use this on basically any one of those. Single heal. It should not be incremental heal. Increase the wear ultimate energy by 10 seconds after unleashing ultimate skill. So this is great for your attack down ultimate champions. You will reduce the time interval between not having an attack down and having an attack down. So it's pretty good. if you compare apples to apples, epic and legendary, there's nothing in this game you can't clear with just epic artifacts, right? So that goes without saying that you really need to spend dupes of good champions here, and honestly you don't even need to spend any dupes at all until like later, like much later, because when you're buying an artifact, you really gotta think who's going to use it and will that passive be effective. Those are the two things that you must consider before getting one, right? Like if we go here, and this one for example is defense, where against shield equal to defense for 10 seconds when the HP is below 30%. It's good for early game. Later game you won't even feel the need for it. Maybe in arena, yeah, you can use it, of course, don't get me wrong. I'm talking PvE only right now. Later, like if you're just starting out, you're not going to be leveling up a lot of these artifacts, right? So you got to be very picky on what you can use and what you cannot use. And another issue with this thing, like once you buy all these things, you never collect these imprint stones from epics, no matter how many. Like it's insane. Like they could have simply added something with gold to give gold, or some other thing that could be used, I don't know. But why don't you give extra of these? Same with rares. So there are like a lot of rares and epic artifacts that are really good, right? So this one obtains extra HP. It's actually a decent piece for if you're building an arena tank who you want a resistance on or something. I can't think of anybody who would say, for example, like arena build only Acelia, where you want to resist and you want to have extra HP so she can cleanse your entire team when you're facing Arganders, who is very annoying to deal with in arena. So whenever you want this resistance, you can probably use it. You can probably also use this in Grave of Venom. You can use this in what's the other dungeon that does? There's an Ancient Battlefield, yeah. So Ancient Battlefield, he's going to stun the furthest target, and if you don't have a Vinyara, you can use this. Right, so there's a lot of utility in rares and epics. And you don't necessarily need legendary ones. Legendary ones are only good, like really good, once you fully level them up, and they're like really powerful. I'm not saying that they're trash. They're really powerful artifacts, but you have to think like how much utility I'm gonna get from a legendary compared to a fully maxed rare or an epic, because the cost is so less. These are going to cost you a lot, 16,000 essence. So it's better to do it in the next season. That's what I'm saying. If you're free to play or a low spender. If you're a high spender, do what you want. You can buy every one of them, or whichever you want to experiment with. But yeah, some of them are really good for PvP, like this one. This is also good for PvE, but this is a must if you really want to compete in arena and CVC. There is basically no other option, which is sad. But yeah, that's the truth. A lot of you guys actually told me that this is bugged. This is not bugged. It just doesn't show in the summary tab, right? So when you go to your heroes and you look at the summary, it won't show here as extra skill haste, but it works. So anybody who is wondering whether it works or not, it definitely does. I've tested it out several times now. But it works, and there are some pretty cool artifacts besides these two that I really like. So for example, for vortex comps, this one is pretty good for somebody who is like a damage support, so that it's either placing buffs for your team to do damage, like take for example Laurenthiel in a rally comp, right, or Tonalalan, or what's his name, Eric for a Flora comp. This is pretty good because it gives range heroes in the team damage bonus. So pretty good. This one, I don't know who wears battle skill. Like its skill haste sure is good, but I don't know if I'll ever use this one in, like, even in last season I never thought like, I had this level up but I wasn't using it at all. It's only in like when you need a supplemental skill haste besides this one, you can use that. So these are just for frost. There's a pretty good damage one that they added, this one. This is pretty nice. So it works really well in Goblin, it works really well in PvP, because there are going to be like 2 or more enemies. I don't know what this surround means, but it does more damage regardless, so it works. Then we had this derivative damage one. So if you compare this one to the epic, again, why they add attack percentage is annoying. It will deal like 35% at max level, but if you cannot max it, it's pretty trash compared to the epic one, right? This one is going to do 35% as well, and it's kind of like there's no gap between anything, so it doesn't even make sense. Like, wait, why would they even make this one then at max? And it's capped at 5 tiles, so it's 35% is the max. So why would you get this only for extra attack? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So some of the epics on are still pretty compatible, and they're like competitive, so don't really worry too much about getting a legendary one as well. The only legendary one that you would really need is in PvP is going to be the Hourglass. You can always go with the Crown of the Unclean in epic to compensate for not having Witches Remain. Later in the season you will get a lot of dupes, so don't worry about it. But yeah, that was all for today. Let me know in the comments below what you would like to see next. I'll see you guys next time.